jumped up, nearly falling from the chair, but equally cold arms caught me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you.
The apologetic and silky voice whispered next to my ear. I glared at him and repositioned myself back onto my chair. Before I could bat an eyelash, he lifted me by the waist and stole my seat. Then he placed me on his lap. So what happened with the Volturi?
As soon as the others are here, we'll talk about it.
I wasn't even aware that Edward was the only one who had arrived. I rolled my eyes as I remembered that he was the fastest of everyone in the family. I squealed when his fingers found my ribs and started worming into my flesh.
Did you just roll your eyes at me?
He asked in a sly and humorous rhetorical way. And no, I didn't stop. I laughed and squirmed uncontrollably on Edward's lap. Stop, no please, I did.
He's tickling a human. How odd.
I managed to glance over at the couch and saw Bree staring at us from the corner of her eye. A small smirk curled the corner of her mouth. Alice giggled from Bree's left side.
They definitely are a strange couple, but you can't fight whom the fates choose for you. They are the definition of that theory, a human and a vampire madly in love. Who would have thought?
Edward stopped tickling me, then buried his face in my back and tried to stifle his laughing. His hidden laughter didn't last very long when the rest of the family finally showed up. I quickly turned to face the others, impatient to hear what happened. Edward let out a moan and his eyes rolled to the back of his head, and I mouthed, "Sorry," to him. "Now can you tell us what happened?" Alice won't share. I stuck out my bottom lip and pouted at the guys, then turned my pout on Alice, who insisted on ignoring me bluntly.
Not much really happened. Jane, Felix, and Demetri showed up. They were disappointed that they missed the fight, but nothing too upsetting. Jane said she can't wait to see you after graduation.
Edward emphasized the word wait a little too much. I cringed, knowing that I was going to have to face the Volturi again.
The Volturi are now under the impression that all the newborns were eliminated and didn't ask any questions. They were just happy that the threat was over and they could return home. But we know that there is still one who survived.
Carlisle talked calmly, then walked over and sat down on the table in front of Bree.
There is something rather important we need to discuss with you, Bree, and we would like for you to consider it.
Carlisle paused and looked over at Eliezer, who nodded with a smile. Carlisle looked back at Bree and her face took nervous to a completely new level.
Eliezer has asked if it would be alright if you could come live with them.
There were numerous gasps of shock, including myself. Bree stared at Carlisle with wide eyes, then turned to look at Eliezer, a vampire she had yet to meet. Eliezer stepped forward and kneeled on the floor next to where she was sitting on the couch.
I know you don't know us, and probably don't trust us, but we share the same lifestyle. As the Cullens, we can teach you to survive and how to live again. I also think it would be a better idea to go to Alaska with us for several reasons. 1. You are too close to Seattle here, and someone might recognize you. 2. The Cullens family is already large, we don't want to draw attention from the Volturi.
Bree shivered violently.
And 3. I can help you with your gift.
She stared at Eliezer dumbfounded, then burst out laughing.
Gift as in a talent. I don't have a talent.
His face went blank for a minute, then he sighed.
Actually you do.
Bree immediately stopped laughing.
I'm gifted as well. My talent is to identify what gifts other vampires may or may not have, and you, my dear, are a repellent.
Bree scrunched up her nose and her eyebrows creased together.
So, I'm like bug spray.
I couldn't hold back my giggle at her innocent question, and she turned to glare at me. I think what he's trying to say is that other gifts bounce off of you.
Bella is mostly correct. If the talent was used against you, it would reflect off of you and hit those around you.
He then smiled at Jasper, and I knew immediately what to expect.
Jasper, can you demonstrate please?
Without a word, he focused in on Bree, and a moment soon after, the room erupted into laughter except for me. I guess my shield works against bug spray as well. A minute later, the room calmed, and all laughing stopped. Bree looked around at all of us, confused.
See what I mean? Did you feel anything?
Eliezer asked inquisitively. Bree looked to the floor as if she was searching for the right words to use.
I think, so it sort of felt like a tickling in my stomach. Then everyone lost it, except the human.
I smirked, and shrugged indifferently while Eliezer sighed.
Yes, well, on an extremely rare occasion, a human will be gifted. Bella can shield others. She can't bounce them back like you can, but she can render them inert.
So what do you say? Are you going to come live with us?
Kate asked enthusiastically.
It will be so much fun having a new family member and little sister. We can go shopping, and do makeovers, and go to the spa.
Bree looked slightly panicky as she watched Kate bounce up and down on the corner of the couch.
I don't really do any of that. I'm kind of a nerd. I prefer reading in a quiet place.
I bit my lip hard so I wouldn't laugh aloud. At the same time I caught Alice rolling her eyes in irritation.
Oh great, another one.
She huffed under her breath.
What do you mean by another one?
Asked Bree with a cautious voice. Alice's eyes narrowed, and her mouth tightened into a line as her arm shot up, like a bullet, and pointed her finger directly at me.
She's the same way. She'd rather read the same book for the 20th time than go to the spa, or she would rather go to the library than go to the mall.
I shrugged dispassionately at her high-pitched voice. Then she growled. A small and tinkling giggle sound filled the room. I glanced from the annoyed pixie over to the frightened newborn that was now giggling quietly on the couch. This newborn was just like me. Give me a quiet corner and a book and I'm satisfied that there were things we had in common. Even though she didn't seem excited about the turn of events in her life, she was willing to make the necessary changes to an otherwise unchangeable life.
What's so funny?
Asked Alice, as she glared at Bree with a pouting lip and her arms crossed. Bree started to laugh even harder, to the point of having to hold her stomach.
It's just that you seem annoyed that we like the same things, and they aren't the same as you. It's good to know I'm not the only nerdy vampire. Bella will be too.
Edward growled beneath me at the mention of my imminent change. I chose to ignore him.
Eliezer is a pretty big nerd as well.
Tanya burst out laughing after her little statement. What was going on, War of the Nerds? I didn't know if I should be insulted or proud.
So what do you say, young one? Want to join our family in Alaska?
Asked Eliezer enthusiastically. It was apparent in his eyes that he hoped the baby vampire would agree to join his family. I was a bit surprised that any of the Denalis was willing to take on a newborn, since the last one turned in their family was about 1,000 years ago. Maybe this would be a good experience for all of them. I watched Bree with equally hopeful eyes and waited for her to answer. She looked to be thinking over every little word spoken to her, analyzing it, making sure everything was copacetic. For a newborn, I was impressed. Her control around her natural food supply was improving. She wasn't asking to eat me anymore, and she seemed to concentrate on current thoughts rather than being distracted at the slightest thing. If this is what it was going to be like as a newborn, I think I could handle it, especially if it was for Edward.
You said family, not coven. What's the difference?
Bree kept her eyes focused on the carpet under her feet, and she looked miserable and lost, like something in her was missing all of a sudden. Esme took Bree's hands in her own and smiled sweetly at her.
The difference is a family cares about one another, covens don't. Families fight for one another, coven members fight for themselves. Families help each other because we want to, not because we get something out of it. In short, families love each other.
Esme's smile widened as she glanced around the room to each of us. The look on Bree's face became thoughtful for about a minute, then she stared up at Eliezer confidently.
Yes, please let me join your family.
The smile on Eliezer's face was the largest I had ever seen, and I smiled along with him. Kate jumped her feet, then flashed over to Bree and pulled her into her arms, hugging her tightly.
Welcome to the family, little sis.
I couldn't hold in the laugh when I saw the poor girl tense up at Kate suddenly embracing her. Bree's eyes darted over to me, and a single eyebrow arched upward. Sorry, that was my reaction also when Alice and Emmett, when they did that to me. Eliezer placed a hand on Bree and Kate's shoulder, before speaking.
Well, now that the war is over, how about we head home?
delicate hand Sonia nodded eagerly, but Bree hesitated at first, then gave a small nod. We exchanged hugs and goodbyes, and the Denalis promised to see us again for our wedding. Which got a gasp out of Bree. I smiled, and winked at her. Bree's eyes suddenly became thoughtful and distant.
We'll find Fred and let him know what's going on,
Edward told her after apparently reading her mind. Bree sighed then smiled meekly. They then climbed into their SUV, and we waved until they were out of sight. I remained on the porch, looking after the direction they had disappeared. The realization of what had happened finally sinking in, an army of newborns sent to kill me, Edward, and Seth destroying Victoria and Riley, a single baby vampire asking for sanctuary, and the Denalis adopting her. In one word, wow. Like always, Edward wrapped his arms around my waist, and rested his chin on my shoulder.
She was really confused, but I think she'll be alright. Eliezer will make sure of that.
He kissed my neck tenderly and affectionately.
I just hope her yearning for Diego doesn't hinder her in any way.
I tilted my head slightly to look at him. Who's Diego? Edward sighed sorrowfully.
Another vampire in her coven that she had grown close to. She thinks she was starting to have feelings for him.
She has all eternity to find that one person that makes her complete. I turned fully in his arms and rested my cheek against his chest. Let's just hope it won't take her that long.
I second that. Even 100 years is too long to find your one and only.